because that domino fell, we now know where Jared Dickey's going to be every day. And for Jared Dickey's benefit, he knows where he's going to be every day now. And they've gone from 5-10 to 11-10 in conference play in 2 weeks. So what changed? What happened? What do you think is the catalyst for this turnaround?
I think it's two things. The team is pointing to 3 days they spent with Quentin Eberhard a couple of weeks ago, which is the UT strength coach, where they got a little tough love. One guy said he's never run so much in his life. One guy said that it was pretty much you were either going to survive and improve or you were going to quit. Tony Vitello essentially turned the team over to the strength coach for 3 days. Coaches weren't around. The strength coach ran the show. And they spent 3 days in a come to Jesus boot camp with him. And a lot of the players are pointing to that and saying that that was the turning point. I think another option is look at who has been stepping up the last 2 weeks. Look, a couple of months ago, month and a half ago, Tony Vitello had an interview, and we talked about this. He named Christian Scott and Hunter Inslee as guys that he wanted to lead. About a week after that, he mentioned Jared Dickey. Well, if you look at the last 8 games, probably the 3 most consistent players on the roster have been Jared Dickey, Hunter Inslee, and Christian Scott. And I think those guys have finally realized that this is their time and they've got to take the reins here. So it's been neat to watch them really step forward and lead this group because they are very young. Like, people forget that just because they're talented doesn't mean they're veterans. And so, 3 guys, Jared Dickey's not really a veteran, but he's played a lot of innings. 3 guys that have a lot of maturity and are really, really holding everyone accountable to how Tony Vitello wants them to play and how they need to approach the game. So I think it's probably a combination of those 2 things. I think Quentin Eberhard's boot camp probably came at a good time. And probably Hunter Inslee, Jared Dickey, and Christian Scott were 3 of the most vocal survivors of that boot camp. And so it kind of solidified them as the leadership of the team.
It was interesting today as they were asking Camden Sewell during that in-game interview what changed, because they asked him the same thing. What changed? And he started mentioning, that he has seen players hanging out more off the field, and he felt like that was impacting what was happening on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting too. I'm going to go a totally different direction, and I'm going to say the emergence of Cal Stark is what has changed for this team. And here's why I think that. If we look back at 2022, that team stability was a big deal on that team. Like, there was no shaking up of the lineup every single game, especially the batting order. You knew what was happening pretty much every single game. Sometimes 1 and 9 might be flipped depending on how Tony was feeling. But 2 through 8, you pretty much knew the order every single game. And periodically he'd say, Blake, go pinch hit and hit a home run. He'd be like, okay, you go up and hit a home run. That's how it went last year. Everybody knew what everybody was doing every day. There was stability. There was a sense of routine in that. There was a sense of, I keep going back to the word stability. People could be confident in where they knew they were going to be coming up to the plate. And we have not had that this year until about 2 weeks ago. And every week, not every weekend, every game, even in series games, the batting order could look totally different. That's why I am so appreciative of Jared Dickey, because like you just said, he's been one of the most consistent players on the whole team. And my goodness, he's hit 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and maybe 5th so far this year in the lineup. I mean, like, he's been all over the place, and he's always produced in every spot. But the thing that was causing so much flux and so much unknown in the batting order was who's going to be at catcher. Yep. If it was going to be Charlie Taylor, well, then that meant he was probably going to hit 9th, maybe 8th. And then you probably have Jared Dickey out in left field. And, then the only question really was who was going to be the designated hitter. Was it going to be Griffin Merritt or Dylan Dreiling? But then if Jared was catching, well, does that mean Griffin's in left field, or does that mean Kavaris Tears is in right field and somebody else is in left field, or there was so much unknown in everything. Was it going to be Christian Scott in right field today, or is Hunter Inslee, where is he going to be hitting in the lineup? And it all centered around who was going to be catching. If Cal Stark was back there catching, then we knew, okay, that meant Jared Dickey was going to be in left field. Cal Stark was probably going to be hitting 8th or 9th. One game he hit 7th, but pretty much other than that, he's pretty much hit 8th or 9th every game. And all of a sudden, he started producing at the plate. And he became the guy on SEC Weekend Series. And that one domino that fell allowed stability everywhere else. Because now the only question each day is who's going to be in right field and who's going to be the DH. Is it going to be Christian Scott in right field, and that means either Griffin Merritt or Dylan Dreiling is going to be the DH, or is Griffin Merritt going to be in right field and Dylan Dreiling DH and Christian Scott has a day off? And it all centers around Cal Stark being at catcher. Because that domino fell, we now know where Jared Dickey is going to be every day. And for Jared Dickey's benefit, he knows where he's going to be every day now.